Hey everybody, welcome back. Glad you're here. Hope you're all doing well. Viewers request, let's talk about the books I read on holiday. Most of these books I'm medium excited about it. I actually started them way before summer. Sometimes maybe years, I'm not sure. It was mostly kind of a period of time where I needed to somehow not journal because I had nothing to say, nothing to give. Kind of, at my limit, I would say. Sometimes that happens, right? Where you just feel you feel good, but still it's drained and you just don't feel like having any output. And so the input, sometimes it just does you so much good. So I just wanted to finish the books that I had started. And then some of these also were just for fun. Ultimately, everything I read should be fun, you know what I mean? But some of those books, what I'm trying to say is I take a little bit more seriously than others. The first book I decided to finish was part of this trilogy. Amazing, original 60s pockets of Tolkien, The Hobbit, and the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So I skipped The Hobbit. Don't hate me. I don't know. I actually think I saw the movie once and it's terrible. But I grew up, of course, watching Lord of the Rings movies. It was always on my bucket list, millennials. We all want to read at some point the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And so I did. I think I started this maybe 2 years ago. I don't know. I started Fellowship of the Ring. Lots of fun. Okay, hold on. Doggy wants to get in. She wanted to hang out with me, I guess. Fun. So, yeah, Fellowship of the Ring, I was immersed into that world. Lots of fun. But it's very interesting, I thought, because it's the same for me in the movies. First movie, I was really young, but first movie, getting to know that world that he made up. And then Two Towers, it's getting a little darker, for sure, and more boring, even slower, because man, these are slow books. But I loved learning more about that world and how in the movies, yes, I keep referencing the movies because that's what I know. I know there's also some form of like an animated something that was maybe more true to the books, but in the movies, they couldn't put everything in. And so I discovered all of those adventures for the first time reading these books. So Two Towers really got bored with the story. I know people love this, but especially that these books are in English because I picked them up for free in one of those bookcases that they have on the streets with free books that people just discard, and you can put your books that you no longer want there and pick up whatever treasures are laying there, and this was one of those treasures. So, The Return of the King, the third book, I started right after finishing Two Towers. And then, yeah, just to be honest, I was bored with the story, so I left it, and I think I left it for at least a full year. I finally had time, beginning of summer, to relax, still in my own home, and read whatever I wanted to read, because sometimes also all those screens, it's just too much. I just want to read an actual book. So I started off with Return of the King, and I really liked it. It makes me giggle. It makes me giggle because yes, it is a little bit kitschy or over dramatic, but it's nice. And actually, the third book I appreciated the most. It's a lovely, great ending. Finally, one of those books where you feel that's a nice ending. I don't know, it feels you're fulfilled at the end. So definitely don't regret picking up the third book and finishing the series. Yeah, I just picked up where I left off, and it was actually easy enough to get back into it. Now, favorite character? Come on, he was my favorite character in the movies too. Aragorn, obviously. Strider. Are you kidding me? Yes. I remember every girl being in love with Orlando Bloom playing that elf, Legolas, and I was already like, Aragorn's my guy. And that's how he is in the books too. I mean, whew, the actor that they got to play the role of Aragorn Strider. Oh, I don't remember his name, but I really like him too because he makes weird movies. I remember the Captain Fantastic. Was that what it was called? Amazing. And that actor is really interesting because he is a little strange but still very dashing, and he speaks so many languages. An actual smart actor. So, in case you haven't noticed, this video is going to be very incohesive, but I just want to talk about what I read and yeah, that I'm happy about it. So, haven't read The Hobbit, but let me know, should I? Is it just as good as the 3 books? Is it better? Second book that I decided to read, or was already reading, was actually the guidebook to this crazy deck, the Ancient Mysteries Tarot. I didn't read the whole book, because after all, it's just a tarot guidebook, but it was just to get into the world that is this incredibly weird and ugly deck that I kind of like. Okay, I appreciate this deck. It's very hard to read, but somehow, sometimes I I enjoy working with these images. And so the guidebook by Roger Calverley, there were parts about it that I loved when he emphasized the ritual and the sacred aspect that is tarot. Or, you can just pull a card to see what your day is going to be like, or what type of energy you can use throughout the day. And that can be helpful and it can be very light. But the way he was explaining it, it was also about really feeling that ritual, really feeling that the cards are a sacred thing, or reading cards is a sacred deed, a sacred act. And I really liked that approach to it, the way he explained it. What I did not love was when he was channeling these crazy over the top, kitschy again stories. Sorry, just my opinion. I did enjoy the book, but those stories about, for instance, meeting the high priestess or something. Wow, I actually did not see that the priestess card was about to come up. So, but okay, to explain, some tarot books do this, right? It's presented in a story format, like a novel kind of thing, where how you get to the meaning of the priestess card is you get to be the fool and you get to meet her. Except here it wasn't done well. No, it really wasn't done that well. It was endless dialogue and explaining his dreams and visions, but to such detail where you think, how is this helpful to me? Because the blue shining orb that you're describing in the priestess card, first of all, it's not there. And second of all, it means something to you, not to me, the reader. I don't know. Is that is that weird criticism to give? Apart from the extremely elaborated descriptions of his dreams and visions and channeling in the book, I really did appreciate the book. But again, I didn't read the whole thing. Yeah, it's a weird deck with a weird guidebook, and I actually kind of appreciate that. Oh yeah, alongside that, I was reading The Never-Ending Story, okay? Because in Dutch. I went on this quest a few years ago to find this book, Het Oneindige Verhaal, by Michael Ende, in the same sort of similar edition that I had as a kid. Actually, I never owned the book, but I rented it from our local library. And I remember loving it so much with the different colored fonts and the story being part of this world, but then the other world as well, and that they merge. And it's very special, actually. I never forgot that story. I never forgot that book. Of course, we had 2 movies, I think. One very popular one with the amazing soundtrack, and one less popular one, which I've also seen at some point, but I don't really remember. But just so you know, the movie is nothing like the book. I'm nostalgic sometimes, and I really wanted to remember why I liked that book so much. Now, I did notice some things a couple years ago already. I noticed that Michael Ende was probably into Thelema. Let me just spoil some things for you. The back of the book, it has a sort of Ouroboros, but then it's two snakes biting each other's tails, which is the sigil or insignia of Fantasia, right? Which is the imaginary or sort of imaginary world that is described in the story. On that insignia, it says, "Do what thou wilt." And it's quite interesting that in the story, the hero who starts off as an anti-hero, and then he learns throughout the story who he truly is, and he finds himself alongside the hero, we also, as the reader, learn what that quote truly means. Because at first it is misinterpreted as "do what thou wilt," meaning, oh, I can do everything I want. And then, of course, he makes mistakes and the whole big ego thing. And in the end, he just kind of becomes who he truly is again. I really did enjoy rereading it as an adult because I remember really loving it as a kid. I only read it once, but I never forgot it. Learning more about tarot, learning more about Crowley, for instance, I realized, okay, I remembered that book. I remembered that it actually said, "Do what thou wilt." Another very clear sign that the author at least knew about Aleister Crowley and Thelema and those teachings is that at a certain point in the story, our hero needs to name the little empress because a name is very powerful. And the name he chooses is Moonchild, which is a novel that Aleister Crowley wrote. So, yeah, apart from those things, I didn't really notice any occult symbolism, but yeah, it was enough for me to read the book, and it's just so, I like fantasy, all right? It's nice to read, to just be immersed in this other world. And it's nice to mix good old tarot guidebook with fantasy children's book. I don't mind reading children's books, especially rereading children's books. I also reread as an adult, and I own those books now, Hexakind and Juniper. And I remember there was a third book too, which I liked a little less because the main character was a boy instead of a girl. But yeah, I own the two girl books, if you will, and I definitely reread them. It's quite magical. Okay, this other book I picked up for free again in one of those libraries on the street. It's called The Celestijnse Belofte, and it's apparently a New Age classic. I am seeing this book everywhere. People really either don't want it anymore because it's completely dated, or want people to read it, which is why they give it away for free. Maybe I'm looking a little too much into this. It's really not that great of a book, but I just thought, let's go for it. You know, it's summer holidays. I'm going to read fiction, which is not usually my go-to. And what this book did was interesting because definitely fiction, definitely things that I found completely cheesy, not written very well, or at least not translated very well. I don't know the original. This one was in Dutch. But it did make me think. It did make me think, yeah. And I actually incorporated some of the teachings into the reading of this video, which was about, don't think about manifesting as bringing in something that you don't have. Think of it as making the link, making the connection between you and that thing, because it's actually already right there. That little nuance can change a lot of things, I think, in the way we approach magical work, intention work. I really think the book was written with a specific formula, but I mean, I was aware of it, but it still pulled me in enough to read the whole thing in a couple of days' time. It's just like watching a movie and constantly thinking, wow, these actors are so good. That means there's something about the movie that is still pulling you in enough to keep watching, but then also you're very aware that it's not real. There was this other thing in the book that they describe as personal drama, which I will try to explain in a extra clip. Okay, in the Celestine Prophecy, they are called control dramas. There are 4 of them. There's the 6th insight that you get in the book. And I don't know, please tell me if this is supposed to be promoting some sort of psychological something. I don't know. Is it supposed to be a religion? Is it a cult? I don't know. But in the 6th insight, it states that childhood dramas block our ability to fully experience the mystical, because this is all about the quest for the mystical and understanding each other. And apparently everybody, because of their upbringing, tends towards one of the 4 so-called control dramas. Now, there are intimidators who steal energy from others by threat. So, intimidators. Then interrogators, they do that by judging and questioning. Then there's the so-called poor me, who make us feel guilty and responsible. And then 4 is aloof people who attract attention and energy to themselves by acting reserved. There's also this formula that the author describes where you can find out, or make sense rather, of what you are by looking at the combinations of your parents. So I don't remember where it is, but if you find the control dramas of both your parents, or at least the people who were there when you were a kid, you can find out what your control drama comes from, because usually apparently we transform into the opposite of what your parents are. Something along those lines? Who read it? Let me know. Next, some honorable mentions. The Mary White, Mary L. Tarot, Landscapes of the Abyss guidebook. I just looked through this, haven't really done what I said I was going to do just yet, but its time will come. It's here. I know I'm going to read something about it because I remember loving what I did read. Then I picked up another awful, I'm sure, and sorry, this is not to bash, but let's just call it 100% entertainment. De Vloek van de Pharaohs. This means the curse of the pharaohs. It reminds me so much of the Celestijnse Belofte. It's not the same author, pretty sure, but it's so similar. So here, for instance, it says Philip also wrote Het Sixtijnse Geheim. That sounds so similar to the Celestijnse Belofte. It's just, what can I say, one of those summer holiday books. And I know it's no longer summer holiday, but it's just one of those no thinking, just entertainment type books, which is very much okay. And we'll see what I'll read first and if I'll ever get to it. Maybe this is gonna be waiting for me next summer. What I'm currently still reading, because it's a pretty thick one, Women Who Run with the Wolves. The way I read these types of books is I underline things that I find important or that I recognize from my own personal practice, or something that's happening currently, something that I think I'll learn from in the future as well. For instance, going through this book, thumbing through this book, I'll find something that I had underlined, and it shows me the essence of the stories and the highlights of the book. For instance, here I highlighted, still quite in the beginning, give me the death I need, as a sort of a magical mantra. It made me think, and it's a very bold statement. If you truly are ready for change, then you're also ready to truly let go of things. And by actually putting it into that sentence, those particular words, give me the death I need, that is very strong, that is very bold. It's inspiring, is what I can say. It is completely falling apart, but I guess that's okay with this book, because it's wild, isn't it? Myths and Stories of the Wild Woman Archetype. I mean, it's just a classic, and I hadn't read it yet, so there. Sometimes when a book is really good, I will just write down sentences or entire passages in my journal to make sure I can always reference them. So those were the books that I read during summer. Only one of them I started isn't finished yet, because I mean, life is getting busy, you know. And then Yeah, these two. I think I'm gonna keep this for next year. I don't know, man. It's just such a summer holiday book, just to read on the beach, you know. And then Marielle, yeah, I'm gonna get into it, pretty sure. Hobbit, let me know. Should I read it? Should I really be super in the mood? Is it something you read? I mean, does it have to be Christmas to read? You know what I mean? Also, I want to know if I'm the only adult who goes on the hunt to reacquire specific books that left an impression on me from when I was a kid. And I don't know if you're noticing, but all of these children's books that actually left an impression on me are about some sort of a fantasy magical world or just plain witchcraft. Okay, that was it for today. You all have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you next week. Bye.